All right. Well, this weekend is all for you. That's why we're here. So, hang on. So like Derek said, I just got back from Australia about 6 a.m. to my body, so I should be awake, right? Last couple hours are always weird. So like I said, this weekend is for you. This topic is not easy to make sense of from a clinical application point of view. What I want you to understand is that every couple decades in every profession, the profession goes through a major overhaul, where evidence is presented that you can't keep doing what you were doing. You have to look at the new evidence and act. Because when the evidence changes, you have to change with it. Okay? Just like in a court of law, I mean, the evidence is going to rule. But what we have to do in our professions in the natural world is we've got to get better at testing. So if you're muscle testing, you're not guessing, correct? You're actually using a modality that's giving you good biofeedback. You've got lab testing, you've got saliva testing. There's a bunch of other interesting testing out there. And 50 years ago, doctors would get together on an annual basis somewhere cool like London, England, or maybe Miami Beach, and you would learn what's new. We do that daily now, don't we? We cannot keep up with what's new. And in preparing this talk for you, it literally was finished 6 hours ago. Because I got 2 emails at 1 o'clock today that I had to quickly jump in and make change. That's how fast we're changing. So find ways to grasp the future. And what's beautiful about what we do is we work on people, right? Maybe we work on their pets too. But as mammals, we can only change so fast. So we don't have to rush out to the iStore and get an update as people, okay? What we're going to look at today is our operating system, our software that kind of gives us updates as we go through life. What you're going to notice is that you're going to be thinking about cases as I bring up certain points, and that's good. I need you to think about your patient base. I need you to have those aha moments that say, wow, that's why I do what I do. That's why I keep going back to the office, and I keep saying to myself, I'm not going to quit. We're going to go to the next level. We're going to try and figure out why this lady is in the hospital with a panic attack because she had a Red Bull and pizza for breakfast. Where did that come from? And yet, you can't stay on Xanax the rest of your life. So by the end of this afternoon, before we go to dinner in the bar, I want you to understand that if you're using nutrition in any form right now, you're doing humanity a favor. Because no matter how wild we tear apart the human genome, it always goes back to some fundamental nutrition. Basics, back to basics. Zinc, magnesium, selenium. Stuff we kind of need, right? The depletion of the modern food supply is really what's caused what I'm going to talk about. Now, one thing I'm not going to do today is talk about why. Because we can't go there yet. We don't have the knowledge. We only have the philosophy. And everything I talk about today is going to come from fact. I'm not going to throw a bunch of theories down. I'm not going to do a bunch of what-ifs. I'm going to tell you what we know so far from the medical literature and try to keep it somewhat FDA compliant, but, we'll see how that goes. So, a lot of us in here are confident in our style of treatment. We're experts. That's why you're here. We want to be better than that. If you're confident in what you do, you might look at epigenetics and say, well, I can fix that. Give me some folic acid. I'm going to suggest you don't do that. Others who are new to this or maybe have been in practice 25 years and have realized that, we can do more. Let's do more. How do we educate the next generation of doctors to do more? How do we give them the confidence to do that? Because a true healer is interested in helping their entire community. Whatever that may be. Okay, it might be your office, it might be your town. It really doesn't matter. But you never stop trying. Okay? You have failures along the way, and ironically enough, your failures give you the best referral. Right? You can't go wrong with trying. So what I want to do is encourage you to kind of, delete some misconceptions about genetics while we do this. You don't have to know everything. There is no test. I want you to understand that this symposium, ideally, should help you and the next generation of doctors, healers, teachers be well equipped to handle what's happening to the human race. Now, interestingly enough, in the last about hour and a half, I read through the notes real quick because a little bit of ADHD, I had to do something. So I read everybody's notes. And I found it amazing that none of us presenting this weekend actually talked about what we're going to do this weekend. And yet it's all related. Dr. White's seminar tomorrow is going to pick up on what I'm talking about today. And Dr. Tent's seminar takes off where my spleen session will end. And then Dr. Guest is going to wrap it all together and show you how to do it in practice. And we didn't even mean to do that. That's awesome. That's thinking along the same line. We're literally on the same path. Everybody in here should be on that path. Think together. We're not here to hide stuff. Well, I got this really cool technique. I got a way to muscle test a SNP. Can't muscle test a SNP. All right? So we're going to share our knowledge so we can go out and share that knowledge. Right? There is a shortage of medical doctors in the United States. Kind of a good thing. Okay? That allows us to see more people that might not have seen us because they would have gone in the wrong direction. So sit back, buckle in. I'll try to keep this as pertinent as possible. It's fast. It's okay. You have notes. There's a digital version of this available to you through Rachel if you'd like that. Don't bombard her right after. We'll get that to you. So all of this is available to you. It's not copywritten. Shall we? We are experts at looking big picture, right? We've all seen the drama with a blood test. Oh, the cholesterol's high. So what? Look at the big picture. Big picture is where this happens. Now, how can we talk about big picture when we're talking about epigenetics? And why are we talking about epigenetics with methylation? What is methylation? Anyone in here that has done a detoxification program? Show of hands. Who's tried a detox? Okay, for those of you that haven't, shame on you. Talk to somebody in the back. Detoxification is about methylation. Methylation is part of phase 2 detoxification. Methylation is how we teach genes and poisons to do their thing. So chemically, we're talking about donating things to a substrate. Right? Now, no seizures allowed because we're going to talk about organic chemistry. Neurotransmitters, central nervous system. This is why a chiropractor is presenting this to you and not a neuroimmunologist. One little methyl group makes all the difference, right? That's the difference between RNA and DNA. You methylate RNA, Bob's your uncle, you get DNA. How many of us have used RNA, the product? Keep using it. It's wonderful for the central nervous system. I encourage you to read anything by Dr. George Goodhart on the brain and RNA. Check it out, it's some cool stuff. Now, methionine is important for us whole food doctors because we can get methionine from the diet, and we'll get into all these mechanisms. But I want you to look at what goes on with methylation. What are we really doing? We are actually changing the communication systems in the body. We have our central nervous system, and we have the endocrine system. And have you ever had them fight? You don't want to pick a fight with the adrenal glands, right? Particularly your own. They're going to win. So methylation keeps all of these things in check. A lot of the disorders we're seeing regarding mental health, neuropsychiatric disorders, have a root in dysfunction of this pathway. So if you think of this, we're going to talk about how the body manages all of these key molecules. Apply that to pediatrics for a minute. What do we see with peds? Allergies, eczema, autism, weird stuff, apraxia, right? And the list goes on. So methylation is all about pediatrics too. If you can get a grip on this stuff, you're really going to open the door on how children's brains can heal. You ever been inside a child's brain? It's a party, right? Sometimes. Other times it's a nightmare. And they just want to get out. So, disturbances in methyl pathways cause that nightmare. Tomorrow, Dr. Tent will discuss homocysteine from a cardiovascular point of view. I'm going to let him do that. A lot of times when we say methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase imbalance, or MTHFR, a lot of doctors jump to homocysteine. Get off that for a minute. There are other things to talk about besides homocysteine, but it is a major marker. And a lot of the research done on methylation comes from research on cardiovascular disease and homocysteine. Anybody in here not had their personal homocysteine levels checked? It's okay. Show of hands. You got to get that checked. It's a major measurement of inflammation in your arteries, and it's so easy to manage. Okay? So start looking at these things. Next time you're on labs on yourself, check homocysteine. I am going to throw out bullets for you regarding lab testing. Write them down, get them checked, and we'll talk about protocols towards the end. Now, what's a phenol? Phenol is a compound that makes life worth living. Its color, its taste, its smell. All right? Why is it that if someone is allergic to birch trees, they're also sensitive to apples? Because of the phenols in those plants. They share phenols. Methylation controls that. So if you're seeing some weird food allergies, and who's not, methylation might be a player. I would say at this point, if you see every person as an imbalanced methylator, you'll be right half the time, minimum. Because our diet's that bad. So, one system turns on genes and turns them off. So the word oncogenesis sounds a lot like something bad, right? Turning on genes, turning off. If a cell forgets how to die, it becomes a tumor. You can turn that switch back on. Methylation has a lot to do with the C word. Chemical toxicity, we talked about neurotransmitters, estrogen dominance. And everybody's estrogen dominant, even guys, right? Go to Cedar Point one day when it's really hot and you can start to see which men are estrogen dominant. It's not hard. Keep your eyes open. We could do a whole reality TV show on people watching with this crowd, right? If we were all mic'd up, just go to the airport. Let's go to Heathrow and just watch and comment. If you're getting stuck with hormone patients, come back to the methylation though. CoQ10. Is it an essential nutrient? No, we make it. But one of the best-selling drugs of all time shuts that process off, correct? So we kind of need CoQ10. We need carnitine. We make those things. Methylation helps us do that. Now, the other thing we're seeing a lot of is demyelinating diseases. Isn't it great when MS turns to lupus, and then lupus turns to colitis, and then colitis turns into something we've never seen before? Is that an autoimmune disease, or is that an imbalance in methylation? It could be viral. But you're going to see more and more neurologic dysfunction in the patients. As a chiropractor, how are we supposed to eradicate subluxation if the central nervous system is damaged? It's kind of hard to get positive feedback, right? You got to look at methylation. Now, we could end the lecture right here. If this was a functional medicine lecture, we would just say, well, use lots of methyl tetrahydrofolate, some methylcobalamin, and call it a day. That ain't working. This is what I was talking about. Back in the 90s, they started figuring out, hey, functional medicine is pretty cool. You know, we can use nutrients as meds and do this for that. What we've learned in the last 20 years is it really doesn't work that well. The best form of functional medicine is diet and lifestyle. And I will argue that forever. Okay? So, beware of functional medicine. Magnesium is the sleeping bear giant. There's the Traverse City plug. Of methylation. Magnesium used to be thought of as, okay, it's good for about 200 chemical reactions. We're over 900 chemical reactions now. Every time you turn around, there's a new role for magnesium in the body. It's a huge player in methylation. It's an activator. So, there are muscle testers in the room. Great, we're all in good company. There's a lot of different ways to muscle test magnesium. I suggest you start muscle testing every patient on magnesium before every adjustment. You will notice big changes. Start loading mag. Start ordering mag on blood work. Everybody's got a magnesium deficiency, just like everybody had a vitamin D deficiency. Okay? Play with those two. A lot of evidence on folic acid, and we'll get to the whys and why nots. But essentially, the research is showing that if you take too much dietary folate, you're going to give yourself colon cancer. So what's too much? Well, in America, everything's fortified, correct? Get off the fortified. Tonight's movie is about cereal. All right, cereal is not a prenatal vitamin, people. You can't eat total and get your daily nutrients. It's not how it works. Okay? So get off folate. That's all I'm going to say. How many people in here have used SAMe before as a nutrient? How many people like SAMe? Okay. Yeah, just what happened, right? The arms went down. SAMe done properly with other methyl factors can be a godsend for the human mind. Experiment with it. Get some SAMe and some really tough patients and see if you can kind of open the door to the mind. These are your stuck patients that never feel safe. But look what else it does. We're going to get into leaky gut. Remember the gut-brain thing? Hope so. Because if we don't stay at the top of our game, our patients are going to consult Dr. Google, and they're going to come at you with a barrage of information from the internet. So, come see Lee Carroll talk about the gut-brain axis, or listen to his webinar. Find anything on gut-brain communication. This is where we're going. This is the neurotransmitter connection to gut health. And where does food go? In the gut. Leaky gut equals leaky brain. Leads to methyl imbalance. Wally Schmidt. How many people have heard Wally Schmidt? Okay. How many people want to hear him again? Yeah. Wally's a smart dude, right? A lot of what I've pulled into this comes from his work. So I got to give credo to Dr. Wally Schmidt. And he's big on looking at the substrates of chemistry. I can't even imitate him. He's so awesome and out there that when he gets in a roll, you just kind of glaze over. Right? My frontal lobe's good for about 3.5 minutes. After that, forget it. But what we find in the cell, if you overload substrates, you're actually going to shut down methylation. So for those people that are taking gobs and gobs of synthetic nutrients, you're throwing a wrench into a very delicate system. We've always known that synthetic nutrients could be bad, right? They're not the greatest way to help the human body. This is one of the reasons. It destabilizes methylation when you overload it with substrates. What am I talking about? Synthetic Bs, right? Niacin particularly, you overload it on niacin, you're asking for trouble. You could create anxiety. You overload it on B6, you overload it on folate, which I heard were good for methylation, you're going to cause trouble. You need therapeutic rational dosing, not therapeutic nutraceutical dosing. So when somebody comes in and says, hey, my psychologist put me on 10 milligrams of folate, I say, good for your psychologist. I advise against it at the moment. You're going to run into trouble. Some genetic playground here. Melatonin. Who'd have thunk? Methylation and melatonin have something to do with each other. If you don't methylate properly, you lose ability to make quality melatonin. And we know we need melatonin for sleep, for nerve repair, correct, but also for cancer prevention. Kind of a key nutrient. Again, we make it. Teach the body how to do it properly. The fact that you've got daycare workers dosing babies on melatonin to help them sleep, you're setting up a nightmare, right? Everybody knows the safety word in a daycare. Goldfish. Things get out of hand in a daycare. You grab a box of goldfish, you throw it up in the air, and stand in the middle, right? And if there's goldfish crackers around here, the kids will leave you alone. because they're noshing on wheat, dairy, and a therapeutic dose of MSG, which has a lot to do with methylation. So when I put up the chart, we don't freak out with the chemistry. Remember that MSG plug. MSG is the root cause of a lot of people's issues, including leaky gut. How do we screw this up? Deficiencies and excess can cause this. Those are some biggies. We'll give you a really good list of medications. Too much niacin can throw you into haywire. We're also finding that heavy metals play a huge role in this nightmare. Now, we've always known that heavy metals can screw up your genetics, right? Hopefully you know that. Going after heavy metals too aggressively will cause this system to crash. So my best heavy metal advice to you, and it's probably my best advice for methylation, is check your zinc levels. Just do a quick zinc tally. If you don't know what that is, grab somebody at the back and they can show you how to do it. What you'll do quickly and in the office is find out your immediate zinc status. If the zinc status is low, your metal load will be high. We'll talk about zinc in a bit. But how many people don't have enough zinc? Everybody under the age of 12, right? First physical symptom of zinc is the horizontal white lines in the nails. Keep an eye out for those, correct? Do we need zinc? It's essential. Wound healing. Is a leaky gut a wound? Yeah, so if you don't fix the leaky gut, you're going to run out of zinc. Zinc is required in the synthesis of quality insulin. So if we eat like a standard American, then we have low zinc because we're hypersecreting poor insulin. It's also used in the synthesis of steroid hormones. So all this low testosterone bunk, let's take a look at zinc status for a minute. Maybe start correcting that. As zinc levels return to normal, heavy metal absorption shrinks. So to reduce heavy metal load and take an edge off methylation, you can raise your zinc levels. It's an easy and office test. But then what do you do if you're low? And that's where the art form comes in. Because 9 times out of 10, you just don't give them zinc, right? You look at its cofactors. My favorite, magnesium. Please, 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 next week start testing magnesium. I wonder where GMO foods fit into this. So, according to Ben Lynch, Dr. Ben Lynch, let's look at his top list of things that could be related to methyl imbalance. Kind of like the list of things that could be caused by a toxic organism. And there's this mess, and this is the list that we typically see a lot of. Now, we're going to look at that towards the end, but I want you to just tuck in the back of your mind, what if methylation imbalance inhibits fertility? So if we have about 50% of the Caucasian population not methylating properly, what are the odds of them being able to reproduce? Not good. To reproduce a quality offspring, not good. So we have Pottinger's cats in this generation. So we have an opportunity to rock and roll on this generation and save the next one. So they talk about, oh, we've got time. I'm a classic procrastinator, and we don't have time. It's now. So right now, there is no deadline. The deadline was yesterday. You're going to see more infertility. And it's not from lack of trying, correct? So, a couple lists. Because we're very good at seeing things in our office. One of the things Dr. Goodhart said was, to be a good doctor, you have to see with better eyes and you have to hear with better ears, correct? Start looking for the signs of methyl imbalances. And a lot of times you're going to see people are both. Sometimes of the day they're high, sometimes of the day they're low. It depends on what they ate. This system changes real time. So if you've done a detox before, hopefully you've had a patient do a detox. I got labeled the detox guy. Whatever. It's all good. That's how we ended up in methylation, because methylation is really just detoxification. Have you ever had a patient start a detox and they got worse? They backfired. Okay. That's a methyl imbalance. When you see that, check them and say, you know what, you remember when we did that and you felt really wackadoodles? I want you to come on back. We're going to do things a little slower. We're going to tickle this system. We're going to get you where you need to be, but we're going to do it slowly. And that is a great patient to have because they want to do it. They want to do whatever it takes. And at this point, they don't care how long it's going to take if you promise that you'll get it done. I promised I wouldn't do any politics today, so you're lucky. All right. Why did this happen? Well, this is what we're thinking. This is what we know, and these are all truths, correct? You want to have a contest? Who can drink the most water out of Lake Erie right now and still have kidneys? Just a sludge, right? And then we'll take zinc, and then our mercury levels will be okay. So the lobbyists are really the biggest problem in this mess. We've all read the books. We're on the email list, so on and so forth. And I don't want to go into paranoia here, but holy cow, is there no wonder we broke the system, right? So one of the analogies I wanted to use is trying to figure out the best way to explain this because it's not the easiest thing to explain to patients, and I get accused of going too fast a lot. So the patient says, slow down. Can't slow down, there's too much to do. So imagine if a PC and a Mac got together, had a few drinks, and made a baby computer. So we have a PC-Mac hybrid. And how's that going to work, right? What kind of operating system is it going to run? We don't know. That's the beauty of reproduction. Let's see what comes out. So let's say that PC-Mac hybrid laptop now wants to run Windows. Well, we all know what Windows does when it updates, right? It's a crapshoot. So you update your software and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And that's no way for a mammalian system to function. So when our genetic software is updating based upon our environmental influence, it better not crash. Methylation is the system by which our genetics update themselves. That's how epigenetics happen. Okay? So I want us to all express our inner Mac, just because it's a stable system. Alright? I know we're using PCs and that's okay. Show of hands, iPhone users. Okay. Android users. Where's my lonely BlackBerry guy? Anybody still have a BlackBerry? Okay, good. So it's getting closer. So what we're seeing in genetics is extreme dilution of the gene pool. And when you get into a lot of the genotyping stuff, you're going to see that, wow, we're really mixed up. So when you study it across the globe, you start to see different populations have different quirks. But in North America, we take the crown. Because all of these medications deplete our methyl factors. Right? They're sucking them out of our body faster than we can put them in. This is just from the book, Drug-Induced Nutrient Depletion. Now, I've shown this slide a couple hundred times. Look at how many of those meds deplete magnesium. It's no wonder we're deficient in mag. Mag, right? Hello. So if you leave today just testing for magnesium, we're very happy. Sugar. Right. Okay. Software. All you need to do to understand epigenetics is understand software. You can't kick your computer. It won't work any better. That's why software engineering is so picky. And if you look at the chemistry of methylation, and we will, appreciate it from a software point of view and how innately perfect the communication system is. Because if you've ever seen software as code, you just shake your head and go, there's no way that would work in a living system. So what's happening is we've kind of broken our software. The fastest way to communicate with our software is through food. That is the loudest we can yell. So if you've got patients asking about all this genetic testing, say, look, man, the only thing you can do to talk to your software, to talk to your genes, is through food. What you eat is going to impact what you think and feel. Just stick with that line, because that really brings home the diet component. Now, we all know that you're supposed to eat a certain way, and everybody has their own unique foods. But you really got to bring it home here to understand that You've got to be 100% all the time. The days of everything in moderation, they're gone. All right? So if you've got a patient who was born after the year 2000, you can forget moderation. It's got to be good, and it's got to be all the time until that system is 100% rock solid. And you got to say it like that. You got to get them to understand that, well, during the week I'm with mom and everything's fine, but on the weekend dad lets me eat whatever I want. Like, dude, you can't do that. Because the next week your teacher wants to put you on Concerta or Ritalin. And you're like, it's just diet. Pizza and Red Bull, right? So hammer home the diet piece, because that is the only way we can talk to our genes. And that is why in the wisdom of Royal Lee, a lot of his formulas are coming back into a new light from a genetic point of view. Being able to talk to the genome and get rid of all the garbage that's muddying the water. So when you're talking about detox and you talk about different levels of drainage, there's the D word. Understand that a lot of people who do a detox end up with a really clean sponge. So if the cell is your sponge, they clean up that sponge really nice. Then they go and put it back in a dirty bucket. Do it the other way around. Get yourself a clean bucket, then clean the sponge. If you address methylation properly, you will do that. A lot of people who do homeopathic detoxification do it backwards. I'm going to suggest you start with phase 2. Start with methylation. We are one with our environment, and what happens here changes our genes. So we all know stress kills, but we need it to stay alive. Who's familiar with the word hormesis, or hormetic? It's the act at a cellular level by which stress strengthens the organism through injury. You gotta get hurt a little bit to get a little stronger. I call it training. You want to go for a bike ride with me tomorrow? I'll show you what I mean. You hurt for a little bit to get better a little longer. Okay? So, with methylation, what we're finding is that every system in the body has a hormetic piece. There's something in nature that we can use that will teach our cells to be tougher. So for our immune system, it turns out that echinacea can teach it to be tougher, more vibrant, vital, and robust. And we'll talk about echinacea. For the central nervous system, rhodiola. Right? Gee, I wonder what plant would be hormetic for the liver. Milk thistle, right? Great. So we're on the same track. So these are the ways you have to start thinking with patients. Is, I know I can't control what you're going to do. We really got to give you stuff to help you get through your bad habits. Because your environment is going to rock your world. And we all live in a 28 or 29-hour day, right? Okay, start keeping track and see how long you can go without checking your phone. And go. See who wins. How many people just check their phone? Right? I just took 2 phone calls up here. What's up with that? Like, go away. So that's the environmental impact that's happening to your subconscious. Here's what we know about the MTHFR. So we've talked a bit about methylation. We know it's detox. We know it cleans up a lot of stuff. Let's talk about how we broke it. Because about half of us in here have a defect in methylation, and we need to find that out. So the research is doing a lot of work on these 2 variants of this glitch. We're going to call it a glitch. Has anybody seen the movie Wreck-It Ralph? Okay. You need to watch it. It's a good kids movie. But it's about a computer software program, and there's a glitch in the program. So I want you to just view this as a software glitch. All right? Problem is, the glitch is global. So has the globe succumbed to the Western way of eating? Statistically, yeah. So let's talk about these things. In your notes, this doesn't show up very well, so highlight the middle. This is the test result. So if we're going to find out, let's just test it. Let's test this person and see if they have this glitch. Pharmacan, okay, which is neuroscience. That's the lab, so you can Google them and they'll send you a nice little welcome packet. This just became available about 4 months ago. We can finally test accurately these 3 SNPs with a single saliva disc for $75. Yay. Patient gets a nice little printout. There's some DNA pictures in it. You know, it's easy to explain to the patient. It's a lot easier to explain than 23andMe. I don't want to get into what this could cause in the future. Let's talk about what it's causing right now. So we're going to use this case, this result, through today's presentation. Okay? So we have tested the single nucleotide polymorphisms of COMT and the two most common MTHFR variants. Hooah! All right, let's talk about what that means. The lab will tell you, hey, here's what it means, and here's what to do about it. Skip that page, because we're going to do better, right? That's what the research tells them they're allowed to say you can do about it. Let's think a little better. Now, you get some nice lifestyle considerations down here. We're all supposed to do that. Don't smoke, don't drink, don't have stress, get a full night's sleep. Good luck with that. I figured out that if we do everything we're supposed to do, we need about 3.5 more hours a day. Would your patients put up with that? Sorry, I can only work 2 hours today. I need to work out. Yeah. So we have to get some language figured out. Not to scare you, but when you're looking at these things with patients, their medical doctors may have done this test already, and they may not have done it accurately. Go figure. So when you're dealing with genetics, just remember that there's heterozygous and homozygous. Remember, homozygous is both copies, hetero means a single copy. When we're talking about genes, particularly SNPs, if you're heterozygous, like this guy, that means one gene is busted and one gene is good. And when I say busted, it doesn't mean it's totally broken. It's just working differently. But you still have a good copy. So like software, you still have your backup copy if things go bad. So we can always go back to mama and restart our system in its out-of-box mode, right? With somebody like this gives you the most advantages nutritionally because you can totally set the stage for the wacky copy to never express itself. More on that as we go. If you're homozygous, if these are all red, you're pretty much done. It means both genes are broken. So they're operating at an altered efficiency. So you have to be 100% diligent in what you do with your nutrition to keep the reins on that system. It's kind of like you're trying to work on your computer and it's going to crash, but if you hold the power cable over here and touch the USB with your toe, it won't crash. And that's what we're doing with nutrition in a homozygous environment. So let's break these SNPs down, talk about what it means. Alteration in efficiency. That's why this is murder in clinical presentation. Because some days they're weird, some days they're great. So across the world, it looks like Mexicans have the highest combination of a homozygous 677 variant. That's interesting. What do we do with that? Not much. My point here is look at the studies being done around the world and the variation amongst the population. You just have to test it. It used to be a $275 blood test. Great. You know, in Michigan, that's not the easiest thing to do, right? But the saliva is way easier. And then you look at what's going on in Asia, they're testing the heck out of everybody, trying to figure this out. Like, the biggest question right now is, does this really mean anything? Should we do anything with this? A lot of the argument of not doing something with this comes from fear of the unknown, because they don't really know what to do with it. You cannot treat this with medication. Okay? Yay for us. We can do lots of things when meds don't work. That's our arena. So, you have your 677 quirk and your 1298 quirk, or glitch. These are the differences, and this is why you have to know both. A couple years ago, if you had these tested, all you would get would be MTHFR. And MTHFR what? If you can't answer the what, you don't know how to handle them. This is where the folate thing comes in. A lot of times you'll see normal folate over here. This is where you see the homocysteine versus the brain chemistry imbalance. Now the reason we're talking about brain chemistry is we can actually test brain chemistry a little better now. So the same lab that'll do this test for you will test neurotransmitters in the urine. Again, no blood. So check out the urinalysis, check out some of the training behind neurotransmitter function. You're going to see that in a poor nutritional state, neurotransmitter function is completely haywire. The analogy I used yesterday was if you've got a laser going through 2 clean pieces of glass, life is good. That's your brain. If you break this piece of glass, now the laser's going all over the place. That's kind of how they feel. The brain's on fire, right? And talking with a doctor up in Canada, he was giving me a story about a Saudi prince who had sudden onset Alzheimer's. They couldn't figure out what was going on. Turns out that it was from Saddam burning the fields, extreme toxicity. This prince didn't methylate, so he had Alzheimer's. So they went through and turned back on methylation using nutrition and homeopathy, did a bunch of cool stuff. And, of course, the prince says, tell me how many zeros, I will fly you to my home, and give you the kingdom, blah, blah, blah. And this doc's pretty cool. He says, no, dude, no, I just want to know what it was like, man. What was it like to have Alzheimer's? He says, well, my brain was on fire. Okay, so, boy, that sounds plausible. But he said, I knew where I was and I knew who I was, but I didn't know what I was. Now, you can track that in neurotransmitter function. Self-identity. How do you know what you are, right? This doctor who helped this prince has found the exact same description in children with extreme autism. Neurotransmitter dysfunction. Leaky gut, leaky brain, methylation. So keep your ears to the email and start to see what's happening here. I mean, who turns down a check with 7 zeros, right? That's some serious universal causality. If you go to Dr. Ben Lynch's website, seekinghelp.com, and there's some references at the end of your notes on this, he'll get into a lot of the medical side of this. He's big into autism and diet and this and that. Don't go there yet. It exists. If you've been there, great. Hopefully I will clear this up for you. Your nutrients to help with homocysteine, and Dr. Temple will talk this a little more in depth tomorrow, are these guys. It's not just folate. It's not just B12. Take a look. Magnesium, vitamin B6, choline, betaine. We are the world experts in these 2 things, right? You should be thinking AF, beta food, choline, methyl donors. That's what we've been doing our whole career. Molybdenum, Dr. Wally Schmidt loves that. So if you need to get a good source of that, ask him. But you can modify homocysteine just by making sure these nutrients are sound. And who's at the top? B12. How do we get B12? You need to eat it. How do we absorb it? We manufacture intrinsic factor in the stomach in a healthy stomach environment, and we pull it in. Who has a healthy stomach? Nobody. What's a proton pump inhibitor do? Shut down that process. So if you're on any PPI like Prilosec, Nexium, Acifex, etc., you don't absorb B12. See where I'm going? Kind of the perfect storm. If you're on birth control pill and metformin due to polycystic ovarian syndrome, and then you party too hard one night and you end up with a urinary tract infection and you go on Bactrim, sounds like start of college, right? You can't get B12 and folate. So you're going to see what I call iatric-induced psychosis or medication-induced psychosis simply due to malnutrition. Now, my favorite is the 1298. I've been accused of being sick and twisted. I'll accept that. 1298 is not the homocysteine variant. This is your neurotransmitter variant. If you've got a kid that's absolutely whacked out of his gourd, and the parents are like, you got to help me, there's something wrong with him. Check him for this. It's probably what's going on. He probably has a variant here. Or she. Forget to go. 1298 is involved in BH4 production. This is the ammonia cycle, the uric acid cycle, urea, start thinking kidneys. It's a big deal because this is where we start talking about nitric oxide. Now, if you are homozygous for this, so you have both glitches, this means the gene's only working at about 20-30%. That's pretty low. That doesn't give us a lot of room for movement. So it's pretty significant. I've had patients come to me after seeing all these different functional medicine doctors. They know all this already. And they just look at me like, help, I can't take anything. Everything I try makes me worse. They never bothered to look at the kidneys. Nitrate metabolism. Nitric oxide. Nitric oxide's kind of good, right? We like nitric oxide? Yay, nitric oxide. We'll talk about beets in a minute. But let's talk about this little BH4 thing. If you screw this up, you screw up all those neurotransmitters. Isn't that kind of the holy grail of psychology? If we could make those neurotransmitters balanced, we would have a very happy organism. Proper stress response, proper relaxation, so on and so forth. There are companies out there that will sell you nutrients. Hey, we can show you how to make tryptophan. Here's how to make serotonin. Your body already knows how. Let's not start installing software that we weren't designed for. Okay? Has anybody ever run Windows on a Mac? It takes a lot of work, a lot of coffee, but you can do it. And that's what happens when you play with these things. You start messing around nutraceutically, and you can actually crash the system. So be wary of people telling you that they can give you things to change neurotransmitters. Your body will do it by itself. Now, if you have a 1298 variant, you will have a decrease in these neurotransmitters from a production point of view, but you also end up with an excess because you can't get rid of them. So, for example, if somebody cut you off on I-75 in the winter and you did 2 donuts and narrowly missed a snowplow and kissed the guardrail, but you kept going straight and you're like, woohoo, I didn't die. But you're still shaking and your mouth is watering and your pupils are dilated. Right? Your body will metabolize those neurotransmitters and catecholamines and kind of clear the system if you're healthy and well nourished. What happens to people with this variant is they don't get rid of it. So the expression, just let it go, they can't. It might take them 7 to 10 days to let it go. Alright? And now we could bring in marriage and all that other stuff, and that's a different joke. But keep in mind that some people just can't clear their brain. They can't let it go. They're hung up on a certain stressor. And if that person has PTSD, now what? Right? You can see what the problem is. Okay, so there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Nitric oxide. What's our favorite amino acid for improving nitric oxide function? Arginine. Right. Where should we get our amino acids? From food. If you have a toxicity in these 3, you're going to break BH4. So let me just walk you through this. What if you're born with a glitch in the genetics that involved that? You're already born. Now, birth is pretty stressful, right? So you're born into the stress phase. We all know we come into this world in sympathetic dominance, and that's how we can survive. For about 2 weeks, we're in sympathetic dominance, and the flora is trying to figure it out. And after about 2-3 weeks, life will be good. But if this system is broken, and you're trying to process all the chemistry of sympathetic dominance, you're behind the ball. It's going to take you longer, right? And then some genius comes along and injects you with a therapeutic dose of aluminum. Whoops. What happened? You have no way to clear these. The brain says, well, you know what? I quit. You get over here and you can just go to the colon. So a lot of these people with imbalances in that gene actually translocate these metals to a deeper level that would never happen naturally. And this is why you see with autism particularly, you're going to see penetration into the lumen of the GI. Some genetic types will drive it into the central nervous system. That's your seizure disorder, so on and so forth. So really, this has a lot to do with environmental exposure and autism. A lot easier than just folic acid, right? No. You've got to make sure this works. Now, up until 2 weeks ago, I was stuck on this. I'm like, I'm not finding anything in the literature that's going to help me get through this. And then I talked to Carrie Bone. And in his nonchalant way, he's like, well, yeah. I'm like, what do you mean, well, yeah? Well, of course. What? Of course. Well, it's beets. What about beets? Pop, there it went. Pulled up my phone, went on the diagram, he looked at it, he's like, yeah, exactly. Like, you knew this all along. So, okay, what did he know? The guys at MediHerb have been looking at methylation for a long time, trying to decide if it actually means anything. They found some plants that'll help. So, we can't necessarily change our code, but we can change how we kind of use it. Right? So just because you're born with these things doesn't mean they're going to kill you. You can change what's going on in the software. Start with methylation. Start feeding that organism properly. You're checking magnesium, you're checking zinc. And that could have been the end of the story. And like I said, this is a work in progress. These notes will change. So just when you have a handle on this methylation stuff, along comes more information on COMT. Catechol methyltransferase. Has anybody tested themselves for this? Rock on Bernie. Bernie's the man. Okay, I had both my kids tested on this one. It used to be thought, or it has been said, that this is responsible for emotional eating. That's what we used to think. It is responsible for emotional eating. That's what they thought, because if you screw it up, you throw off dopamine. So people go to food for comfort to balance their neurotransmitters, probably have a variant in that gene. According to Dr. Amy, she's saying that if this is going on, you're going to have an imbalance in this metabolite, and that will cause some wild mood swings. How many people use chase tree? When I say dopamine, you say chase tree. Dopamine. Rock on. Melatonin. Chase tree. There's a connection there. If you want to know the intricate details of it all, you can look at Carrie's new book. Or you can go to a webinar. I don't know if they'll be presenting that one anytime soon. Chase tree and dopamine. Go figure. Everything we knew about chase tree was wrong. It is a prolactin inhibitor, but it also stimulates dopamine production. So that's important. Because an emotional eater often has PMS issues, correct? And PMS can cause emotional issues. Vice versa. Number one food craving at that time is chocolat. Okay? What's chocolate high in? Magnesium. See the link? It's wonderful. It's also high in polyphenols and other types of antioxidant compounds found in nature. So if you have a child who is homozygous for this gene, they're going to like chocolate. Okay? Keep that in mind. This affects the prefrontal cortex. So these are those kids that have to always be eating. People that just can't go without eating. This might be the missing link for obesity. How many more links are missing though? Right? Obesity is pretty cut and dry. There's your estrogen connection. Now, if COMT is broken, can't break this stuff down. So that's why we're testing COMT with the MTHFR. If this is you, you might want to get tested. So back to this poor guy. He's lucky because he is heterozygous. So he still has a good copy. Alright? His sister is homozygous for COMT. Both parents are negative. How'd that happen? If both parents don't have this SNP, but both offspring are expressing one or both, what happened there? Immediately you think lab error. Or, Lucy, we have a problem. But it all matches up. Everybody's fine. This could be evidence of how epigenetics can happen. And the research is showing that, what happens to the follicle could be different. What happens to the sperm production around puberty due to stress? Things can happen in a single generation. So if it can happen that fast, we can undo it that fast. Mood. Moody people are very hard to train. They're also very hard to heal. Hard to get people well. All of these things are affected by that COMT process. So if you really want to get into doing some brain work, and we do a ton of functional neurology in the office, we work with the Carrot Clinic in Atlanta. He thinks I'm crazy. I know he's crazy. So we get along. He's Canadian, I'm Canadian, right? You see the relationship. My thing is, hey, there's got to be a nutritional connection for functional neurology. Okay? So if I can stand on one leg with my eyes closed and not fall over, I must be okay in Carrot's world. There's more to neurology than just testing physical stuff, right? If you can walk in a straight line and stick your tongue to the left and look to the right, and you do that enough, you'll be really good at doing that. Nutritionally, though, we can fix post-concussion syndrome properly applied. So we are not prepared to teach that today because that would totally melt your gray matter. Right? But is chiropractic good for concussions? Yes, and maybe. Because poorly applied chiropractic can make concussions worse. So proceed with caution. Learn how to evaluate concussion and check their methylation. Because you can't heal a broken brain if they don't methylate. These are the key ones we want to talk about. You've got your chase tree down pat. When I say GABA, you say kava. GABA. Kava. Who's had kava forte? Me. Who likes kava forte? 2 hands. Amazing. Kava enhances GABA receptor uptake by making the receptor flexible. So the receptor site kind of does the axle rows in the brain, and it allows a better uptake of that neurotransmitter. That's how it works. Isn't it great that somebody somewhere in a lab is trying to figure that out? Because that means that we just improved its safety profile. So the biggest thing with kava has always been, well, is it safe? I will guarantee you, after watching them make this stuff, it's as safe as you can make water. Okay? If they say it's safe, it's safe. Because there's not going to be any monkey business in a Mediherb tablet. You don't get the liquid here, and you're lucky. Liquid kava is nasty. They went out of their way to get the royal kava, blessed by the priest from the proper hereditary line and the Oompa Loompa land or whatever. But they go out of their way to source the absolute finest royal kava, which means it's going to have punch. And it's what's used in the studies. Now, if you want to monkey with folic acid, look what you're going to monkey with. Now that you know some neurotransmitters, do we really want to mega dose folate? No, because you're just rolling a bowling ball down the hall. You don't know what's going to happen. Don't do that. When I mean mega dose, I'm talking about going over 1 gram or 1 milligram. Right? A food dose would be 400 to 800 micrograms. You break that 1 milligram mark on regular folate, and you could start throwing this system off. What's histamine doing in there? I didn't know that was folic acid dependent. Give you an option for allergy. B6. In AK, B6 is all about what? Trigger finger, sticky ligaments, all that stuff. Dr. Goodhart says, eat some pecans, you'll be fine. Okay? Unless you take medication. If you mess with B6 out of range, you're going to mess with these things. Histamine. Not things you want to mess with. What do you need to activate these things? Same stuff we've been talking about, zinc and magnesium. Phosphorus. Has anybody ever had an acousticardiograph performed on them? So you're going to date yourself. ACG. So Royal Lee developed this thing. You can measure your heart sounds. And every time I get my heart sound measured, they go, dude, you need some phosphorus. Phosphorus is a key nutrient for the activation of B6. And guess what I don't do? I have a homozygous copy of 1298, so I don't methylate the neurotransmitters properly. If I take B6, I go crazy. If I take phosphorus with B6, I'm okay. They had no idea what an MTHFR SNP was when an acousticardiograph was created, right? They didn't know about these things. It didn't exist. And yet they still saw the physiologic presentation of genetic issues. They already knew. Maybe we forgot a few things. I'm going to skip through ammonia real quick and go back to this guy and make a point. We still have hope because there's only one copy. So, what are we going to do about this? Lifestyle is number one. Lifestyle rules. We need some ground rules. Patients love ground rules, right? Do it my way or leave. You can't tell me that. I just did. I've been told I'm harsh. And that was my dentist. Who loves treating their dentist? I love doing massive lateral axis moves on them. Anyhow, what is a lifestyle approach for methyl imbalances? Relax. Remove yourself from stressful situations. Don't keep checking your phone every 20 minutes. Don't sleep with the TV on, so on and so forth. A low-stress lifestyle. I think the diet's pretty straightforward. Eat clean. You can grab the book back there, 1 Degree of Change. There's some good recipes. You can grab any of the detoxification books. There are diets in there. That's a methylation diet. All right? Change your environment. If you clean houses for a living, you might want to consider not using so many chemicals, because all those chemicals have to get methylated. So if bleach has ever made you crazy, right, switch to something else. If your job requires you to work with crazy chemicals, let's say you work in a gross anatomy lab. We all remember that, right? We all love that. I had people in the gross anatomy lab when I was doing the embalming that would just lose their mind, and it turned out they were sensitive to the chemistry, and they don't methylate. So ask about that environmental component. What do you like to do on the weekends? Oh, I drag race. Car exhaust is a biggie. Right? If you sit in traffic all day, you probably have some environmental toxicity. Don't freak them out. They're already freaked out. Okay. So positive mental outlook. Try and put a positive spin in everything. My insurance isn't going to cover that. Correct. And that's okay. Oh, okay. Don't go into the normal, Palmer stance of, because they don't work for you, ease off the approach. Get your point across. Discuss that nutrition is not just taking a pill. They have to understand that if they're going to get anything better, healing does not come from a pill, liquid, or powder, right? Healing comes from within. That's what we're working on. This is the software. What the nutritional supplements will do is help us update that software properly. Okay? So the way to approach this with patients is say, we have to do some nutrition. It's going to be extensive over time, but we're going to go slow. This is the only way we can update your software. Right? Unless you were born with a Wi-Fi adapter, we really don't have a lot of options. This is the only and best way to do it. Medications will only make you worse. If you see somebody that looks really crazy, you might want to talk about the parents. I guarantee you, if you see somebody that's homozygous for all these things, they're going to start talking to you about how their father killed themselves and mom did this and aunt and uncle, and they've all just got these weird issues. Dr. Tent's going to talk about some people with sudden cardiac death way before their times tomorrow. It's the same stuff. Homocysteine, markers of inflammation. So get a good history going. Keep it basic. You can look at GAPS or paleo. I'm not going to, banter on about different kinds of diet. Drop the toxic load, fix the gut. Go poop once in a while. Once a week is not good enough. You can even buy a t-shirt with a little stick man on it that says, I pooped. Okay? Get some in the office. One of the things that usually works for a stubborn case is disodium phosphate, right? Don't forget about that little thing that we can get. So does Colax. But disodium phosphate will often start the engine, so to speak. You don't keep them on it forever. But something else that helps these people poop is magnesium. Full marks, mark. I've also found that beta food can start the process because it's a methyl donor, right? So you're starting to see a relationship. You only need about 6 things to treat the most complicated methylation cases. Drugs, drugs, drugs. How many people have patients come into their office with 2 or 3 grocery bags full of junk and they feel worse? And the last thing they want to do is take more supplements, right? Exactly. When you do this test and it comes back for a heterohomozygous imbalance, you can explain to them, look, you didn't know this at the time. You were trying to do the right thing. Without this information, it could have been right. It turned out wrong. Now that we have this new information, let's do it properly. You tried. It's okay. You're not throwing away money. Just consider it tuition. You learned a lot, right? Throw those bags out. Start the good stuff. Try to chew your food. Everybody loves protein shakes because you don't have to sit down and eat, all right? How many people have ever reduced a hiatal hernia on a patient? Who loves doing that? Okay. I will suggest that you also reduce the ileocecal valve at the same time. Seems to give better results. But if you don't chew your food and you eat in a hurry and you're in the car and you're on the phone and you're going to cause a hiatal hernia, which can cause chest pain, which can cause anxiety, so on and so forth. See the connection? If you don't know what I'm talking about, find an AK practitioner, they will teach you. Try some water. Kind of need some water. Now what happens when you don't absorb water? Doc, I drink 70, 80 ounces of water and all I do is pee. Put a little bit of sea salt in there. Often people don't absorb water into the cell because they're so mineral deficient they can't make a go of it. So a little bit of Celtic sea salt or some trace vitamin B12. So the biggies are underlined. Ethanol, #1 cause of heart disease. According to Kerry Bone, ethanol and sugar trump cholesterol, fat, and all the other stuff. I'll let him draw the pretty pictures, but when he says it, you have a whole new appreciation for beer and pizza, okay? Because it can scar your arteries and also throw off methylation. Anybody treating Lyme disease? Sorry, we're not treating Lyme disease. We're helping the person with Lyme disease get healthy, right? All right, okay. You'll find that some doctors are using anti-malarial drugs on Lyme disease. That's why I put them in there. I have doctors in Ann Arbor that are using a boatload, come back to you, of cholestyramine. That will deplete folate and a bunch of other stuff. If you have patients on cholestyramine, you know, we really got to do some support because it can muck them up. They're using cholestyramine on Lyme because they're saying it's helping, and I have yet to see that. Methotrexate, you know, that seems to be in vending machines these days. It used to be reserved for a lot of things, but no, let's give it out. So I want to get to beets. Foods that will help. Stuff we already know. I wonder what a little green food would do. Quick reference to Dr. Dobbins. My favorite line was, when the last green thing you ate was Jell-O, you have a problem. Okay? So, thanks, Dr. Dobbins. And you'll get some of this tomorrow in Dr. White's lecture. But maybe we understand why there's so much yeast in standard processed bees. Thank goodness for sunflower seed butter. It's been huge for helping kids with certain food allergies because it's a great source of calories. Tastes okay, and it's really high in folate. If you haven't tried it, get some, see if you can tolerate it. It's a superfood. And you've got your usual hippie food. But if you haven't been to downtown Traverse yet to check out some of the food shops, there's a lot of local farm-based stuff. You can get a meal with all of that practically. Although they're kind of veg heads around here, so if you're looking for a good piece of liver, you're probably in the wrong town. Medically, this is what the medical literature says. Alrighty? NAC is N-acetylcysteine. A lot of work going on making a liposomal form of glutathione. That's oral tolerable, so keep an eye on that over the next few months. There's the glutathione. Start rebuilding the belly. We'll talk about the belly when we get into spleen. Of course, your magnesium. Now, one of the things I didn't know, and I learned this from a sports scientist, is they always give taurine when they give magnesium because it aids in the sparing of it. So if you're having a hard time getting the results of magnesium, consider adding 500 to 1,000 milligrams of taurine. And that should help the system kick in. If you're muscle testing, try muscle testing taurine with the magnesium. And for that matter, when in doubt, if you're getting weird results with muscle testing a single nutrient, find one of its cofactors to test with it, particularly the methyl cofactors. A lot of times, if you just throw down AF beta food and start testing, you get totally different results. Okay? Food for thought. All right, so BH4 we talked about, main therapies. Basically, these are detox therapies. Who has a rebounder? Good, use it. Just not in a low ceiling, right? Yeah. That creates a whole new chiropractic program. It hurts thinking about it. Hot yoga seems to respond well with these people. Just be careful if they're completely adrenally exhausted. Don't do hot yoga. Build up their adrenals first because the heat will stress them out too much. These are the people that pass out in hot yoga. Right? The usual, clean up your life. Easy on the folate. They might think they're supposed to take lots of folate. Dr. Google said I need to take lots of folate. And there is the vaccine note. All right. There's stuff in vaccines that will fry methylation. Don't do that. So, what do we have in nature that'll give this a go? Really quick, this is the way Lee Carroll explains herbs. You ever had a doubt about whether herbs are good or not? Since the dawn of humanity, since mammals figured out how to be mammals, plants and mammals have evolved together, okay? Regardless of when that happened. When a plant changes, people change. So plant defense mechanisms keep the plant safe. But those defense mechanisms teach our body to be stronger. So when you cut a boswellia branch and the sap leaks out, that's a defense mechanism. We can then take that sap and use it to turn on a whole host of genes. Turmeric tastes the way it does as a defense mechanism so it can survive. And yet, the bitter compounds that are in turmeric turn on over 70 genes in our body. So we have this evolutionary symbiotic relationship with plants. The oldest plant is ginkgo. And wouldn't you know it, ginkgo is neuroprotective. Ginkgo prevents nanoplaquing in the arteries and the brain. Ginkgo will lower lipoprotein A. Wow. Because LPA is like the smoking gun of heart disease right now. So start reading more about ginkgo. It all happens through that heme oxygenase 1 pathway. You can teach the brain to heal with ginkgo. People that don't methylate have hurt brains. They have sore brains. Ginkgo can help them heal. What's the rule with methylation? Go slowly. Now, garlic forms a ton of hydrogen sulfide in the gut if you take it properly. The Mediherb garlic will definitely do that. In the effort to support the whole leaky gut, leaky brain system, you got to look to garlic to maybe reestablishing healthy flora down there. So a nice test you can do to people, it's kind of rude, have them eat a couple cloves of garlic on a Friday night, and if they're in dire straits all day Saturday, they definitely have a leaky gut because that is irritating the inflammation. So if garlic blows you out, you know what I mean, you have to look at methylation. Okay? Don't do that test on yourself tonight, though. I don't want to get hurt tomorrow. Rhodiola. Rhodiola rosea. This is your central nervous system adaptogen. Because people that don't methylate have so much neural stress, we need to help adapt to that stress. Rhodiola is key for that. A lot of times this is used for the people where you've tried Eleutherococcus, you've tried Drenamine, you've tried adrenal complex, you've tried withania, you've tried it all, and they just backfire. You can try straight rhodiola. It's available in a tablet, also as rhodiola ginseng, which the ginseng might get weird, but that's only about 5 in 1,000 people. Okay? Rhodiola modulates heat shock proteins on the neural tissue, makes your nerves stronger. My favorite, kava. Interesting study on kava that kind of brought it back. They looked at general anxiety disorder, no depression, gave them 120 milligrams of kava lactones. Those that didn't feel better, they moved it to 240 milligrams. Now, that can't be. That's too much. That's 5 kava forte tablets. That's about 3. That's about 5. Anybody ever tried 5 kava at once? Not bad, right? Yeehaw. He said it's okay to say this, but Mr. Carroll took 20 on a flight and couldn't move for 5 hours. He tried to move, but he couldn't move. So the reason I have this up here is they also took these polymorphisms into account in looking at this. Kava, now that we have it again, is one of those tools in methylation to support that critical anxiety phase. People that can't shut their head off. That fear of impending doom. When I say fear of impending doom, you should also be thinking cataplex G, right? Okay, hopefully. So basically, real quick, beets are good. Correct? Anybody want to argue? It turns out that there's a secret pathway known only to wizards and magicians that allow beets to help us produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is used for energy. So let's look at that pathway. Anybody never used AF beta food? You need to open some. So the A and the F thin the bile, right? The beta food flushes the bile. That's how it works. Typically, that's kind of how I use it. I've had people regularly go up to 24 a day for acute situations. You can bring it back down if you need to. Choline, you can get choline. We need that for methylation, obviously. But it's wonderful for an emotional gallbladder. That's an emotional gallbladder. That's your shoulder pain, mid-back pain, knee pain, can't get better, stuck in that guilt and remorse mode. No matter how many times you plow into that dorsal spine, the pain just doesn't go away. Add choline. About 3 a day, maybe three times a day if you're taking it up enough. So this is the one slide I wanted to show you, and this is the intricate software of methylation. No panic attacks. It turns out that there's kind of a secondary pathway over here, the nitrate-nitrite pathway, that beets can help with, and that we can shunt that chemistry in here and elevate nitric oxide. Didn't know about that. How do we not know about that? I thought we knew everything. So in the study of methylation, they're finding all these little quirks. Nature updated our software so we could do more. That's what happened. Now you can pull this off of Google real quick. Just go to Google, type in MTHFR, and click images. And you will see this in all its glory. And we don't have the time to walk you through the details, but basically, lead, aluminum, blows the system out. That's the enzyme we've been talking about. If this enzyme becomes overactive or underactive, the clutch fails, you grind the gears, you can't clear the waste material, you end up in a hypercortisol state. GABA function breaks down. You start to lose your mind. You never feel good again. And you're producing so many reactive oxygen species that you start to kill your brain cells. Sounds like a standard Friday night. All right. There's calm tea. So you can see this imbalance crosses the entire system. And 10 years ago, we thought, well, if you just give them lots of this, they'll be fine. That's not the problem. That's kind of just like the clutch. So you have to learn how to use your clutch. All right? One note on homocysteine, because I found this rather fascinating. This is your exercise connection. If the need for energy is elevated, and you don't need just cysteine, you can actually convert homocysteine into alpha-ketoglutarate, methyl factors, and hydrogen sulfide. So people that don't methylate need to work out, and they need to do it every day. Whether it's a walk, a run, push-ups, it doesn't matter. They need to do something every day to lower their homocysteine. Okay? That's the workout thing. We do a whole lecture on workouts. So Derek's going to make us take a break while we mull this over. We'll come back and